Hello there and welcome to my channel. So today I have been grinding Bluemage like an absolute fiend, and I am hoping that it is still true to say, by the time that YouTube decides to upload and fully process this video, that it is still today that Bluemage came out. But fingers crossed on that one, we'll have to see. With that being said, I am making this video as a kind of let's get started with Bluemage and let's get everything that we want spell-wise, rewards-wise, what can you expect for rewards, what are you going to see in the Masked Carnivale, and how you kind of can generally solve them. Pre-warning and disclaimer, it is not the fastest way to clear them, but you know what, I still cleared them in the first day, and so have a little bit of mercy on me for that, and I will generally try and steer you in the right direction to clear all the fights and what you should be aware of, and kind of like any heads up before. But without any further ado, let's get right into it. This guide is going to be assuming that you have at least most of the Bluemage content in the past done, and we are going to be really focusing in on particularly just the 5.1 patch Bluemage update changes. And so if you need a more in-depth guide on what is going on with the Bluemage in terms of the other spells or the Masked Carnivale events, for that you're going to have to go somewhere else. I might do it later on this channel depending on how many people want it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, you're going to go to the Miners Guild in Ul'dah, and then you're going to walk a little bit, and then you're going to have to talk to Martin. He's going to just guide you through a series of quests. You're going to get quests at level 50, 53, and then 58. I'm pretty sure it skips over all the other ones, and then at 60. But with that being said, I'm going to be very upfront with you and tell you, in terms of leveling, most people that I know that have hit 60, which I'm just gonna be honest with you, most people either hired someone to go through Aziz's Law, killing mobs on, probably Machinist would be the best class to do it, and they just would tag the mob, the Machinist would kill it, they get the full experience from that. In this instance, I don't really want to say that it is a hack or a bug, because I don't really believe it is. It's cheap, it's absolutely cheap, there's no doubt about it, but I do believe that it is honestly what I have seen tons of, and especially now, like I can go to Aziz's Law right now, and I see a bunch of different people here just doing it, so it's not like this is like super hidden or some kind of secret. People have known this for a while now, and honestly, if you want to get to 60 really quick, this is going to be your definite best way to do it. I personally would not recommend grinding, because Bluemage grinding parties, I tried it and it wasn't quite as effective. But again, remember that if you do this, you are going to really water down your experience with the Bluemage, so really pick and choose where you want to put your priorities for this one. And that being said, let's get into the next step, which is going to be unlocking spells. And we're going to cover Masked Carnivale and all that after that, so if you think that this section is a little long and that this is all the rest of the video, no, there's more. Timestamps are in the description. And so if you want to just skip ahead to anything, then feel free to more than totally just do that. So this patch brought forth number 50 to number 80 in terms of spells, so we get roughly 30 spells now, and so that is definitely a significant upgrade from before, where we only had 49. And so it does add some diversity. It doesn't quite add diversity in spells that I really wish it would. Like, I really wish that we had some card buffs. But anyhow, as I go through how you're going to unlock them, you're going to get a generally good feel on what you're going to get. So starting with spell number 50, we get a line AoE called Alpine Drift from the Griffin mob. This is going to be in Sea of Clouds at location X of 36 and Y of 9. Next up, we have spell 51 is going to be Protean Wave, which is from Living Liquid, and it's going to be a water damage AoE in front of yourself. And so you're going to be doing this through either A3 normal or A3 savage. In reality, you're going to do the normal version. And then spell number 52 is going to be Northerlies from the Slate Yetis in Quarthus Western Highlands in X coordinate 25 and Y coordinate 31. And I noticed that this mob sometimes uses it really quickly, but I have definitely heard from people that sometimes you need to wait for the mob to be around 50% HP or so before they will actually cast it, so kind of be aware of that. For spell number 53, you are going to go to the Sea of Clouds at X28, Y36, and you are going to go after the Conodont mob, and that's going to give you the Electrogenesis ability, and that is going to be a nice circular area of effect lightning ability. Next up, for spell 54, you're going to go into either Alexander 1 or Alexander 2 normal, and you're going to kill a Faust, which means, conveniently so, you're not going to actually have to kill the boss. That's one thing that I should say for a lot of these spells, is you can really get into these dungeons or raids or whatever, and then you just go a little bit, you hit the mob, and then you just back right out. Or at least that's what I did. You don't actually have to complete the dungeon to get it, which is really convenient because a lot of these are very easy to access. Next up for spell 55, you have Abyssal Transfixion, which is from Ash, which is going to be the second boss in Hockey Mane hard mode. You're not going to see it in the normal mode as far as I know. And then next up at spell number 56, we have Chirp, which is from the Paisas. Burn them for their houses. I hate them. And you basically need to wait for the mob to use Chirp, and this can sometimes take a while. I know that there were some Paisas that I was basically sitting at for quite some time for it to happen, but head to the Sea of Clouds at X19, Y34, and wait for Chirp to happen, and then whack the Paisa into oblivion. And number 57, you go to Azizla, and then you look at an Impuse, and then you wait for it to use the move Eerie Soundwave, and this is going to be an Azizla, X29, Y11. And then for spell number 58, Healers Rejoice. I'm rejoicing at least to finally see this. Is you get Palm Cure, which is our single target heal. And this is specifically from the Furryfoot Kupli Kip. I never really knew the name. It's just the white mage Moogle from the Thorn March trial. And you don't need to do the extreme or whatever, it just do Thorn March normal. Whack the Furryfoot Kupli Kip thing, the white mage one, and then just wipe. Spell number 59, Healers Rejoice yet again. We get the Gobskin ability, which is a very, very nice, convenient AoE shield for everyone, and you get this through A10 normal. But realize though that this is going to be one of the trash mobs before the actual boss, and so really wait for it to actually cast this ability and then kill it, and just be wary of that. Don't just burn through all the mobs into the final boss. You can actually completely skip doing the boss in its entirety. Next up for spell 60, we have Magic Hammer, which is going to be a very powerful debuff that is going to lower the strength and intelligence of the mob that you use it on, so that means that they're going to do less damage, and it's going to also deal pretty decent AoE damage, and you're going to be getting this from, it's not the last boss, but there's like I can't really say a mini boss, but mini boss called a Panda that is right before it, and just basically whack it and you're gonna get the ability. For ability number 61, we have what is essentially like a reverse cover ability where you are transferring your damage taken to another target, and this is from Saint Mociane's Arboretum, and so that is gonna just be your second boss. That's gonna be like the Vespiquen kind of Pokemon one, and yeah, it's gonna just use that. That is basically when you see the Vespiquen basically like latch on with like these cover tethers to a bunch of different wasps around herself. That is going to basically be this ability. Now for spell number 62, we finally have a provoke ability for Bluemage, and so definitely worth picking up for sure, and you are going to get this from the Porogos, and they are in front of Master Matoya's kind of like what you call it, hillside cave dungeon thing. Is that shady to say? It might be, but it's true, and so that's going to be in the Dravanian hinterlands at X of 12 and Y of 34. Next up for spell number 63, we have Sonic Boom, which is a very convenient ability that has a shorter cast time, which makes it far easier to weave in other spells. And so go to in Anzu, and that's going to be in the Sea of Clouds at X of 21 and Y of 6. Next up at 64, we are also in the Sea of Clouds. For this one, we go to X of 17 and Y of 33 to the Dalmals, or the giraffes, and then you wait for it to use Whistle, and then you smash it. Next up for ability 65 and 66, we have two different versions of line AoEs from the White Knight and the Black Knight, and these are not really mini bosses too, but they're just two kind of like guards before the second boss. So just wait for them to use these abilities and then take them both out, and then you've learned them. Next up, we have ability 67, which is from the Great Gooble Library, which is level 5 death from page 64. I'm going to be quite honest, this takes a very long time for the mob to cast. You can try and be in melee range. I personally think that might help. I'm not really sure. It just took a very, very long time. So get in front of one of these page 64 mobs, just sit in front of it, wait for it to cast it, and then smash it. Next up, we have number 68 from Balesar's Wall, which is the launcher ability, which is from the second boss called the Armored Weapon, and this is going to deal very significant AoE damage if you get lucky with it. Next up for ability 69, we have the ability Perpetual Ray from the Manipulator, which is A4. Ability number 70 is going to be a defensive steroid that we can either give to an off tank, to a main tank, or from a healer onto a tank, but it's significantly weaker when it is done by anything that is not the tank, and this is going to be in either 5% or 15% if you are in tank mimicry stance. And yeah, it's very useful. You're going to go to Temple of Qarn hard mode specifically, and for the second boss, and it's not going to be the boss itself, but it's going to be one of the ads that it spawns, and then you're going to have to wait for it to basically cast it on the subattender that is the main boss, and then whack it. Next up, we have the Revenge Blast ability, which does more damage the more HP that you have taken, or HP damage that you've taken, and lower your HP is. And this is going to be learnt from actually a totem, and this happens, and this is available for the NPC if you learned 50 spells total before you came to them. Next up for ability 72, you have to complete 30 stages of the Carnivales, and this is honestly why it has taken me so long to do this video, because you need to literally complete all of them. And this is our revive ability for the Blue Mage, and it is called Angel's Whisper, and it is absolutely mandatory to use. It is so useful. But yeah, you need to just clear everything in the Carnivale. Just be really patient with it. We will get to that section on how I actually recommend you clear it. Next up for spell number 73, we have Exuvitation. I'm gonna call it AoE heal. We get AoE heal from Abelathian Warmora, and so this one is one that was very frustrating initially for me, because I'm like, why is it not casting it? It's just spamming Poison Dust or whatever that cone AoE is. And for this one, the trick is that you actually need to get nearby mobs to very low HP, I believe like below 50% HP, and then you drag this Wamora toward them, or them to the Wamora, and basically it will then cast it as an attempt to like AoE heal them. I think that that's kind of flavorful. I find that really kind of cool that it does that, but before I knew that you had to drag damaged mobs to it, oh my god, was that annoying. And next up we have ability 74, which is Reflex, which is actually one of my favorite abilities. It looks so freaking cool. But basically this is going to slow a target and deal lightning damage, and it is acquired from the Churning Mist 4 arms map, specifically at X of 23 and Y of 29. Next up we have ability 75, and this is from the Binding Coil turn 1, and this is going to be from actually completing it, so you're going to need to finish that last boss, and you're going to get the Devour ability. And so basically what you need to do for this is you need to wait until a kind of like a pudding thing spawns, and then you're going to have that you're going to walk it all the way to the boss, and the boss is going to use Devour on it, and then you basically can take out the boss. One thing that I can recommend here is that you actually handle it properly, and that you have 2 separate tanks, because if you let this have a full 8 stack of damage buff, it's just going to whip through it. I even tried doing it on Scholar to help other people clear, and it just ripped through even Adlo. It was just handle it correctly. That's all I can really say for that. Now spell number 76 is going to be Condensed Libra, which is an interesting ability, I'll say that, and you are going to get that. In my experience, people have been reporting that you can get it from Mask Carnivale 24 second boss, but for me, I personally went to the Great Google Library on hard mode and waited for one of the little ads. It's not quite at the last boss, but it's after the second boss, and then you just wait for one of them to use Condensed Libra, and then you whack it. Next up is ability 77, and honestly, if there is any spell that I recommend people to get as quick as possible that is a big game changer, it is this ability. Go to Pharaoh's Sirius Hard, and then it's not the first boss, but it is like the little ads around it, so wait for them to like basically you place a tether on these ads, and then they use this like mimicry ability. I can't really remember it. I assume that it has the same name, and then you just whack the ad, and then alternatively you can just wipe to the boss if you don't really want the boss experience. But wait, isn't that level 60? I leveled way too fast. And then next up we have spell number 78, which is Supranaka. let's just say that it is Kamehameha, because that's all I can think of when I see it is Kamehameha. And you get that from Ravana normal, so Thok as Thok normal, and yeah, make sure that you just don't get blown off the sides, because most blue mages do not have the revive ability, and yeah, just be aware that the walls come down. Next up, our second last ability is Quasar from Sophia, which is basically like a meter AoE around yourself. It's nice. It's on its own independent cooldown. It's fair. And you get that from Containment Bay P1 T6 normal, and yeah, just smash Sophia. And then last off, we have one of my favorite abilities, and ability that I have seen a lot of people really freak out over when they finally use it, which is Brute Justice's J-Kick ability. And so you're gonna go to the Burden of the Sun, A8 normal, and then you are gonna whack that boss. And so that covers all of the spells that you're going to be getting for patch 5.1. So with the spells covered, let's talk about the Mask Carnivale. So we previously had 25 previous installments that I'm not going to be covering in this video, but now we have 26 to 30, and so we now get 5 more installments onto this. And each of them is, I'm going to be honest, wildly different, and I did not honestly have the most fun time in the world trying to figure out all these mechanics on my own. So hopefully this really helps some people out. So first off is going to be a 2-phase fight. First off, you're going to go against an Arena Mirror Knight, and then you're going to go after this kind of giant demon thing called a Papa Humbaba thing. In terms of this fight, what I personally do recommend is, and you'll notice that I'm very defensive as a player, is I'd recommend for you to have the Mimicry ability at least before this. I strongly advise that. And so that allows you to just better recover from any mistakes, because some of these fights you get decent amount of chip damage, and while a really good person who's really familiar and really good with it can just use Healing Wind, I personally find that the Palm Cure is very handy. So for this fight, definitely go in as a healer in my experience. Bring Palm Cure, bring earth damage abilities, especially earth damage abilities, because you have the Papa Humbaba thing vulnerable to earth, and you want to get him down as quickly as possible. And and you're gonna want to have the Eerie Soundwave ability. And so what that ability does is it basically removes a beneficial effect from the target. Hilariously enough, in practice outside of the Mask Carnivale, I've noticed that I can't really remove that many buffs, but I digress. But in this instance, it is essential, because the Mirror Knight is going to make themselves extremely tanky, and this Papa Humbaba thing is going to buff themselves through the roof. So what I strongly recommend here is that you focus target them, and basically you keep track of their buffs as well. And as soon as they have the buff, just knock it off with Eerie. And then one other thing, and I think that it's something pretty persistent through all of these Mask Carnivales, especially this iteration, is that you're going to want Flying Sardine. And so basically if you see the action bar flash red, or flash red, let's go with that, you're going to want to cast Flying Sardine and interrupt this action, because that's going to be definitely a significantly painful action. And so make sure that you have Flying Sardine for this as well. Aside from that, I've really found that most of these fights were just dodging things. Like, there's going to be quite a few telegraphs on the ground. You're going to want to dodge the Flying Clouds from the Papa Humbaba ability. You're going to want to prepare for some of the bigger AoE burst damage from the Papa Humbaba with a Palm Cure on yourself beforehand. But you are not, in my experience, going to really benefit from using Diamondback, so I don't think you really need to worry about that. It's going to be useful in some of these, but not this one. Now let's talk about Mask Carnivale number 27. Probably my favorite. It really wasn't, and I never want to do it again. So basically with Typhon, you get a bunch of bombs thrown out a lot, and for the record, Typhon is extremely tanky. I have tried this in DPS stance and a bunch of other stances. Really, it's just a long fight, and if you make a single mistake, in reality you're gonna get punished hard. So first thing to note is that there will be 2 sets of bombs. There will be normal bombs that are circular, then there is going to be like this jagged, edgy kind of Pokemon, but basically this Pokeball is going to be like what you really want to like smash. It's going to be very important, because you should also think about this fight as a DPS check. Like, Typhon is extremely tanky, and it is basically filled with a ton of DPS checks where you are going to need to break this Magitek explosive extremely fast. And how to say it? you need to dodge the bombs. You're going to be blown in different directions, and you should generally aim yourself and the bombs in a way that they're not going to, and you are not going to overlap this Pokeball. And so one thing that I definitely made a lot of use of, I'm not sure if it is the most efficient, is the tongue ability from the frog, and basically dragging the bombs away from where they could potentially be blown into the Pokeball. And likewise, kind of positioning yourself, because Typhon is going to blow you back quite a bit. It's just like what it does a lot in here, and so really position yourself, but make sure that you position yourself away from the Pokeball. And this is actually going to be something that I really want to stress here, because I wiped it so many times. Make sure that you stay as far away from the Pokeball as possible, because in my video you might be like, oh, why are you only using the 200 potency or water gun ability? And I'm using that specifically because it is ranged. It's a little less potency for sure, and absolutely does make the fight longer. But the trick is you want to be away from this, because Typhon will cast a fire AoE around yourself, and if that hits the Magitech explosive, it's going to explode and it's going to kill you. And for the record, Diamondback does not save you from that. Believe me, I tried. It does not. And then really for the rest of this fight, you just try and, I can't say burn down Typhon, because it is a long fight no matter what you do, but you just chip away and chip away and chip away. And I think that mostly it's a battle of fatigue, because you need to make sure that you are DPSing down the Magitech explosive quick enough. And actually, that's one thing that I should say: save your off global cooldowns. Like if you have the primal abilities, save these for the Magitech explosive. Don't just blow them on Typhon, in my experience, because if you are a little slow, and even in some of this footage that I'm going over right now, I don't know if it'll make the final cut of the video or not, because editing is weird and I'm bad at it, but basically, yeah, I'd say play it safer, because no matter what you do, it's going to be a long fight. But know what sucks is getting down to like 10% HP and then just not making the DPS cut because you were blown around, you weren't able to fully get your water gun abilities off. That is super demoralizing and frustrating. I speak from experience on this one. I don't think that I'm immune or saying like, oh, I'm so good, because it was super frustrating. So just be really aware of that. Position yourself always away from it. Save your cooldowns from the Pokeball. Use the frog tongue and move the bombs away from the Pokeball. And yeah, it should just be a grind after that, but it should be a steady grind. Next up for Mask Carnivale number 28, we have Forgal. I mean, Durin in this instance. Okay, screw the Void Arc series, but... So basically for this fight, there are quite a few things to watch out for and to know before you come in. First off, I personally bring in Electric Spell Proy because I just like the aesthetics of it. There was no real point in it. But what is going to be very important is that you bring Flamethrower. You are going to want that fire AoE spell, because one thing he does throughout the fight is that he will spawn adds that are weak to fire damage, and you're going to want to get rid of them very, very quickly. These adds deal a significant amount of damage, and that's definitely something to be very aware of. And one of the reasons why I say if you're really struggling to clear them really quick on DPS phase, do switch to healer phase. I personally did it on DPS phase, just because I wanted the fight to go a little faster, but be very aware of that. Another thing is that you are going to want to bring in Flying Sardine, because Durin is going to cast things that you want to interrupt. I do not know what it actually does, but I know for a fact, given my experience with Mask Carnivale, is that I don't want to know what it does. So whenever you see him cast Cackle, interrupt that. He's going to cast a pool on the ground, and basically this is going to deal significantly painful bleed damage to you. But the flip side is you are, and one thing I like, please do focus target him, is one thing he will cast is called Megadeth, and you will basically want to stand in this pool, and that's gonna just instantly KO you. And just the way to avoid it, and you do take a significant burst of damage but you don't die to it, is just stand in this puddle. During the fight, he is going to also have a mechanic called Brainstorm, and it is going to give you one direction, and it's going to give you a buff with a direction on it, such as for me it was right face, but it can also be the other directions, I presume. And it is going to take forcibly your character and force it in that direction relative to where your character is looking. So say your character is looking directly ahead. I don't know what it's like for console player, so I'm sorry, but at least on PC for myself, I just look at my character where I'm looking, which is generally straight ahead with my character's backside facing me, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be shoved to the right, so I move my character to a way where they are going to run into a safe zone to the right, or whatever direction you get. So that's definitely something to be aware of, but aside from that, I don't find this fight really too taxing as long as you're aware of those things. But if you aren't aware of those things, I speak from experience, they're gonna kill you. Actually, I should have said this at the start. One other thing that is very important to keep track of that did kill me like twice is he will cast an ability called Doom Impending. Doom Impending, when it is finished casting, will inflict both doom on you that can only be dispelled by healing yourself to full, and it will give you a debuff that will make you unable to heal yourself. So make sure as he's casting this, before he's done casting it, that you've healed yourself to full, and that'll basically, he'll apply doom and it'll instantly go off you, and that's really the only way that I know at present to really handle this mechanic. So keeping all of those different things in mind, this guy should honestly be a very easy fight. Now for number 29, and this was probably my least favorite fight of all by far. And so you're gonna have a Shikigami of the fire and then one of the water. Just think of them as fire and water. And so these have a weakness either to wind for the fire guy or lightning for the other one. And so make sure that you bring spells that can really optimize damage for this, because the longer these fights go, the more risky they are. So getting into the mechanics of the fire guy first, he is going to cast a bunch of AoEs on the ground, and one of his casts is going to be something called Pyretic. When he has Pyretic on you, he's going to put an orange AoE marker on the ground. Don't move when Pyretic is on. It's a short-term debuff. You will have enough time to run when the debuff goes away from it, from the puddle essentially, and then, how to say it, Pyretic, if you move at all during it or cast any abilities, you're going to take a ton of damage. You might be able to get away with 1 or 2 ticks, but if you take more than that, generally you're just going to get crushed by the damage. He's going to have a few other mechanics, like one to look out for is Rush, and basically you want to get as far away from him as possible in the arena. Of course, given other mechanics that are going to go on during the fight, don't just stand in bad, but yeah, definitely be ready for this. Another thing to actually be said with that point is I find that during this fight in general, I took a huge amount of damage and that I ran out of MP very quickly, so I do recommend going in healer mode and making sure that you bring Palm Cure for this fight. And actually, talking about heals and Palm Cure, bring the AoE heal ability as well, the exfoliation or whatever it's called. Make sure that you have that, because that is going to be very important for the second boss. And of course, bring other abilities like Flying Sardine to interrupt casts. That's going to be super important as well, because they are going to cast an ability that is going to literally knock you off to the other side of the arena. So if you see a pulsing red cast bar, cast Flying Sardine and get that away from you as quickly as you possibly can. The fire boss is going to cast other mechanics like Flare Star, which is going to just be moved to the edges of the arena and you'll take very little damage, but he is after that going to start summoning like tornadoes, and during that mechanic you're actually this is a very mechanic heavy phase, and I don't know if it's probably the best thing to say, but I personally got a little overwhelmed with it, and I'm just like, I'm not dealing with this, and I'm going to use Diamondback. So one ability, probably not optimal, I'm pretty sure, but I brought Diamondback as well for this. So during that fight phase though, he is going to cast Flare Star. You're to the sides of the arena. 3 fire tornadoes are going to start appearing. Then he's going to try and cast an ability. You're going to want to interrupt it very quickly after. There's going to be a whole lot of telegraphs on the ground, and at that time, when you are supposed to use Flying Sardine, don't use Diamondback yet, because you're going to choose through your MP very quickly that way, and MP is a very valuable resource during this fight because you will need to cast Diamondback, in my experience, a little bit. But after that, soon after that, you are going to want to cast Diamondback, and because I find that these telegraphs are, especially at this part of the fight, very unfairly quick. And I'm just like, okay, you have 3 line AoEs, you have the entire ground other than a tiny sliver of a corner covered in fire. I'm just going to Diamondback, and even in Diamondback, you're going to take a whopping of damage. So again, I suggest healer stance, make sure you're fully healed, Diamondback, and pray. But aside from that, it's really not too much to the first guy's fight. I mean, as long as you're aware of these things, I found them really easy. It's a lot of AoE telegraph dodging. You're gonna move for basically when he covers the platform in these like black fire pits. You're gonna either move to the outside or the inside of it. He's gonna cast what is it? It's not Pillar of Flame. Pillar of Flame is the black ones that I just talked about. It is going to be it's going to be, oh yeah, Sea of Flames, and that's going to be 1 and then 2 ground AoEs placed at your position. I just walked around and avoided them that way. And that being said, just continue those, be aware of those mechanics that I just described here, and honestly, he should be a really easy fight. Next up, we have the water one. And so for this one, make sure that you're switching your wind spells to your lightning spells. That's really going to make quite a huge difference here in my experience. And so he's going to start off by using an ability called Protean Wave. I don't know how much it hits you for, because I just saw the ability and I dodged the first bit. You will almost always get hit by the second one, but it's so weak. But I don't know if that first one is just a heavy hitter, because he casts that and I just say boogie your way out of that. Next up, he's going to cast a Mechanic Ferrofluid. Remember, magnetism, well, opposites attract and likes repel, but if you are likes repel and on the sides of the arena and blown into the sides of the arena, you're probably going to wipe, because it's going to be a lot of damage. He's also going to cast a mechanic called Fluid Ball that you can think about as kind of like a non-telegraphed version of that Sea of Fire ability. It's going to be a 1-2 AoE burst that basically follows you. Likewise, he's going to use Fluid Swing ability just the same as the first one. You're going to want to use Flying Sardine and making sure that you interrupt that. I love flying sardines. And then he's going to cast an ability called Watery Grasp through that, and it's going to basically summon 2 ads. I don't think, if the footage is showing it right now, I don't think I handled it right. I think maybe I should have gone for the left one first, because I did notice that this left one did start draining my MP with something called Palmistry, and I hated that. That really sucked. But yeah, if you have the Ramu ability for their massive staff strike, their lightning strike ability, then make sure you use that here. Use Leviathan's Veil of the Whirl. That will punish them pretty significantly because they're weak to damage. And yeah, basically that shouldn't be too hard. I mean, even though I think that I did the wrong hands in the wrong order, it still wasn't too bad. But there is going to be a very important phase where you need to use Diamondback again, and this one is not optional as far as I can tell at all. And so if you see him casting the ability Big Splash, again, I strongly advise focus target them. Truly, their cast bars are going to make or break your ability to do this. Is basically cast Diamondback as soon as you possibly can with that, as soon as you see the cast bar, because that, or I guess you could wait a bit. Maybe I'm being overzealous when I say that, but yeah, just do that. Another thing is that instead of fire tornadoes, you are going to get these like snowy Pepsi tornado things. I don't know, let's just call him Pepsi Man because that's what he is. And then during this phase though, he is going to be casting the Fluid Swing ability and Flying Sardine his face when he does, because trust me, the size of the arena really hurt. During this phase though, as well with the tornadoes, he will cast other abilities, like they're just mechanic stacking, where one of them is called Fluid Ball, and basically that's going to cast 3 AoEs on the ground, and you need to go to the area where you are going to take the least damage, and so kind of like follow the circles and go to the area of the least impact. And oh yeah, I'd say that you shouldn't need Diamondback there, because if you stand in the best position, it's really not that much damage. And here I forgot about probably the most important mechanic that is going to wipe a lot of people. A lot. And so during this fight, he's going to do it at least twice in my experience with this fight. It's going to be near the start of the fight and kind of nearish 25-ish% for myself. Is something called Throttle. He's gonna kind of like hold up like some dish or something and whack it on you. And so the trick for this debuff is it is essentially a Doom debuff, but does it go away when you fully heal yourself? I don't know, but what I figured did work was using that exfoliation ability, the AoE heal that you get from the moth. That will cleanse the debuff. And so yeah, I definitely found that that was certainly very useful to use. And yeah, I definitely can say that if, as long as you manage that and monitor that, actually I'd say one thing to suggest that I personally did do is that make your debuff icons, go into the HUD and make them huge. Make them huge and in your face, because when you get that throttle debuff, like, I don't think that there's a cast time. I can't recall seeing a cast time at all with that. Even going through the footage, I can't see a cast time. But when it's applied to you, use the exfoliation ability and make sure you get that off of you, because when it says it's going to kill you in like 10 seconds, it's not joke. But keeping all that in mind, he should honestly be a pretty simple fight. And yeah, not too bad. Okay, now let's talk about our final fight, which is fight 30. I am hoping that the footage doesn't look as choppy as it does in editing, but I'm going to be honest, compared to the other fights, this guy is really easy. So first things first is make sure that you go into the fight with exfoliation. Make sure that you go into the fight with at least one spell of every element. This is going to be very important for the third fight. So have one water, one ice, one fire, whatever. I don't know if he goes through literally every element, but I'd say you have the slots, use. I personally didn't need diamond back for this fight, and yeah, for me in terms of physical spells, I personally love the abyssal transfixion ability, because flying swords is definitely my aesthetic. I love it. And yeah, and personally for this fight, I actually, in terms of what I used on the boss, I really just spammed abyssal transfixion, but it's the adds in the third phase that you're going to need to worry about elements. Okay, so with that said, first phase, he is going to sometimes cast an ability called Ankle Graze on you that is going to bind you in place. Use exfoliation, get that debuff off of you, and run out of the telegraph. Again, the expanded debuff markers are very helpful here, but then again, it's very clearly telegraphed that you're bound, so less a worry. One mechanic that he is going to do is he's going to summon a bunch of bombs on the ground, and then he's going to use an ability called Rubber Bullet. There is going to be one spot on the ground in a far corner. In my experience, it was always the back rightmost corner. I don't know if that's intentional, I don't know if that was RNG, but for me at least, it was the bottom back hand corner to himself. So position yourself so that when you're knocked back into a safe zone, but don't go too far back, because otherwise you're going to be knocked into the electric AoE circle around yourself, and that's going to really suck. But aside from that, I've really found this really easy, so just beware of those mechanics and kind of just breeze through this phase. So for the second phase, it's not all that different from the first, other than the fact that you have AoE abilities to now be a little concerned about. He is going to use Law of a Torch and Law of whatever. It's just a triangular three-pronged AoE that you can basically stand in kind of like the middle between them. It's really not too bad. The one mechanic that I can say is a little troubling here, I mean, he does a few other things, like he uses Swift Steel abilities and that, but those are just basic orange AoE telegraph dodges. But he will use abilities where he summons ice and fireballs all around the field, and that one is problematic, and I do want to really so at some points of the fight there are going to be a bunch of fire AoE telegraphs put on the ground. There's going to be several ice spheres placed around to dodge the fire AoEs. They're going to burst first in my experience, and then for the ice AoEs there is going to be one part of like a circle of these ice AoEs around himself, or ice balls around himself, where there is not a ball. Position yourself so that you're on the outside of the arena in somewhere safe where the ball is kind of missing, and then all of those are going to explode and you're going to be generally safe. I have found that I am frozen, but I find that I don't die, so I'm not sure if I'm doing the mechanic correctly or not, but I find that while I am frozen and he does start using more AoE telegraphs, that I am able to dodge, so I'm assuming I'm doing it at least okay. I mean, I was able to clear objectively, so but really that's all that you really should be aware of for this second part of the fight. Honestly, I found that this fight was significantly easier than the others, so just basically dodge the bad, stand wherever there's an ice ball missing, get deep frozen for a temporary bit, dodge the AoE immediately when you're unfrozen, kind of similar to how you move out of antipyretic really quick for the AoE dodge, so yeah, not too bad. And now for the third phase, it is kind of nice because the mechanics that you were just introduced to through phase 1 and phase 2 of like the bombs and the rubber bullet and being knocked back really sees itself again here. But with one added thing is that he is going to summon a significantly weaker, like this one has significantly less HP, kind of clone of himself, but this one is going to be weak to only one particular element. And actually it's kind of funny, I am going to show in the footage, I'm going to make sure that I show in the footage that there's an ice thing, and I really only have glass dance as an ability, and so I can't kill it. But what eventually happens is that it despawns itself, and then he summons like a different element. And I'm like, okay, good. Let's see if I have a wind ability. Well, at least I had one. So I don't know, I'm just kind of taking it in stride with this one. Basically, you try and take out the ad, but again, it's just like a natural progression to the last ones. The AoE dodging for the last one wasn't bad. It's not going to suddenly be bad for this one in my experience. Just continue to spam Abyssal Transfixion to him. When he binds you down, use exfoliation and get out of there. When he summons bombs, knock back to them. When he summons ice things around himself, go to the one area that there's not an ice ball to the edge of the field, dodge that. Dodge the AoE immediately after you're unfrozen. And in reality, I find this a really easy fight. Actually, I should probably say that he does use an ability called Magic Drain, the same as the first phase, where he will make himself like reflect magic damage to you. But I personally just say spam Abyssal Transfixation, and it really truly is easy. It's really not as bad as I'm hearing some people make it out to be. I swear it's not that bad. Just be aware of these AoE telegraphs and just dodge. Not too bad, I swear. Okay, so now that that is all covered, let's talk into what you get for all of this. So after you clear all of the Mask Carnivale, you get the Bluemage's Revive, which is super useful. It is actually really core to getting a good clear and making sure that everyone gets their spells, because if you die during it and you don't get the spell, that really is, it's lame. So one thing you can talk is you can talk to Maudlin Latoul Jaw, which is just that Amalja kind of like in the middle between Martin and the other one, and you can get a new weapon at item level 270, so that's a higher item level. And what I have been told, I don't know for a fact, is that higher item level makes your blue mage scale higher rather than like any weapon stats, so this is going to be a decent boost. You can also pick up some accessories. In particular, the ring is going to be useful unless you have a another 270 ring from actual raiding, but most people probably won't at this point, and a lot of raiders probably already got rid of it or exchanged it for seals years ago. So yeah, I find that that was a good upgrade. It also has a nice aesthetic. It has like this blue and gold kind of regal aesthetic. I don't know if they were quite going for that, but that's kind of what I get from it for glamour. And then in terms of the other items, you can get a few orchestral scrolls, so if you really like those songs, go for it. You Justice, and then you get this massive headache thing that they're calling feigning fatigue, and you can trade in for materia. I personally wouldn't trade in for materia at this point, but that's just me. I think the other things are probably much more worth it, if I'm being super honest. So now let's talk about a little bit of the endgame content that you can do with the Blue Mage. So you get something called a Blue Mage log, where you can do dungeons, you can do trials, and you can do raids on the Blue Mage, which I think is fantastic, and it keeps track of like all of the different things you've done. And you will get a significantly good first time bonus reward, which will give you some allied seals, a very small amount of gil for the record, very small, and it will give you some poetic tomestones. I think that ultimately, if you want me to be honest, this is more useful for people, and I have been working on a relic weapon guide, so it would be useful for people looking at doing relic weapons. In particular, say you want the Heaven's Ward relic weapons, because I personally think that they're really gorgeous, or that you wanted like Nirvana Zeta for your white mage. So I think that in those instances that this would be highly beneficial to people. But aside from that, I'm kind of, as someone who has all the glamour pieces that they really want from those expansions at this point, I look at this and I think that there's going to be another video soon talking about Blue Mage. I'm not trying to be shady. Like, some people have commented in my last video being like, oh, you're trying to just put it down, you don't appreciate it. No, I love the Bluemage, that's a problem. I want to play it more, I want some reason to play it, like, give me a reason, but, I mean, I have only a few more allied seals to get until I can buy both the Orchestran Skulls and the Glamour pieces, and then what? We're right back at square one of that video. And it's not because I'm trying to be shady, it's not because I'm trying to be a downer, it's just, I just put in literally a full day into getting this Bluemage up and running, and I have cleared all of that content with them, and now I'm left with, I don't know, poetics, but what do I want to spend poetics on? And I think that that's an issue, is it's just like, there's so little end-to-end game stuff, and I just, especially now that they fleshed out the healer too, cause I find that that aspect is much nicer now that I actually have some shields, I actually have some actual heals aside from that MP vampire of White Wind, and so lots of good things, but we're again kind of at square one with that other video, where now I've done all this, where do I go from this? I don't know if after today I will be using the Bluemage much more. And that's not me trying to be shady, that's not me trying to put things down, that's not me trying to be a downer. And I really kind of, it sucks when people say that, because it's like, damn, if anyone really wants the Bluemage to pan out, it's me. But anyhow, I have now covered the Bluemage and everything that you can do. From the Masked Carnivale guide, I have covered how to get the spells and the rewards and all this stuff in nauseating detail. And so that kind of brings us to the end of the video. So what are your thoughts on the Bluemage? How are you liking the new spells? Did you get any spells that you want? Are there any spells that you want to see added? Do you like the Masked Carnivale, or do you see some use for the poetics? Actually, if you see some use for these poetics, I mean, I'm not omnipotent. I'm really not, and trust me, Dunning-Kruger has not visited me for a very long time, so I am definitely not under that effect. So if there is some way to use it, hey, totally let me know, and I am open to wanting to, like, play this, because trust me, I want to. But anyhow, that is all for the video, and any likes, comments, and subscribes are super appreciated, of course, and yeah, I appreciate your viewership, truly, I really do. Anyhow, that is all for this video. Now time to get to editing it and praying that YouTube uploads it before the end of the day. Oh my god!